Hello and welcome. We're joined today by Fox NBA analyst Jim Jackson and the founder of the Big League, Jason McIntyre. Let's start in the NBA, where a blockbuster trade rocked the NBA yesterday with the Cavs sending Kyrie Irving to Boston in exchange for Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and the Nets' first-round pick next year. McIntyre pretty much predicted this exact trade back in July.
He did.
On the Big League. Great job, Mac. Obviously, Cleveland needed to do something after getting dominated by Golden State in the finals. Cowherd, does this trade give the Cavaliers a better chance against the Warriors?
I think for a year, Jay Crowder's a real piece. That's 14 point a game, good defender on the wing. Derrick Rose is a piece. He can give you 14, 15. I think for a year, it makes them a little closer. That doesn't mean much because the finals weren't competitive. It's funny, when I drove in this morning, I thought everybody was going to love the Boston trade. But actually, you and I talked about this, there are a lot of people that feel Cleveland short-term won this thing.
Short-term, I think it's great. Jay Crowder will give LeBron James an opportunity to rest on the defensive end. When it's time to defend Kevin Durant, now they have Jay Crowder, not Iman Shumpert, not Richard Jefferson. They have an actual guy who can defend and give LeBron a chance to rest on the defensive end. Isaiah Thomas obviously is a scorer if his hip is okay. Again, to me, he's not Kyrie Irving. But to me, the most important thing was how does this trade impact the Kevin Durant matchup? And I think it does favorably for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Now, you remember in the fourth quarter of Game 3, the Cavs were in the lead. And that's when Durant took over because LeBron was tired. I think, as you said, Jay Crowder, he's an elite wing defender, guys. And we're not giving Kobe Altman of the Cavs enough credit. This is a 34-year-old GM of the Cavs. Remember, Danny Ainge would not part with that #1 pick for Paul George. He wouldn't do it for Jimmy Butler. And now he's doing it in this deal. I think Altman did an amazing job. And, Jim, I think finals could be a toss-up, honestly. But they improved that much.
Not even close?
Not even close. Not even close. The trade, what did the trade do for him in regards to really closing the gap on Golden State? One, you got a point guard that's, you don't know what's going to happen in regard to his injury. He hasn't been on the court yet. You have 30 days before camp starts.
Let's pretend he's healthy.
I can't pretend that because I don't know yet. And plus, when he's on the court, he's still a defensive liability.
Oh, and Kyrie wasn't?
Yeah, but Kyrie can give you a little bit more defensive because he has size on him a little bit more. Jay Crowder, I love him to death. He doesn't give you the height to defend Kevin Durant. Maybe the little strength. He doesn't give you the height. Now, this trade to me is a stopgap in a lot of ways. From a Boston perspective, you got to look into this a little bit deeper. One, they weren't going to pay Isaiah. They weren't comfortable where he was at 29 years old, coming off a hip injury. So they moved on. Good for Boston. From a Cleveland perspective, they're going to spin this thing saying, well, we made this type of deal because we don't know what's going to happen with LeBron in the future. We had to do something. The 2018 pick works great. But for me, they still haven't closed the gap. You need somebody on the wing, somebody that's going to give you numbers, going to give you points, going to give you size. They don't have that.
Couldn't I argue this? In the history of the league, we would all admit this. Whenever there's a trade, who is the best player? That team won the trade.
Kyrie Irving's the best player.
No question.
Yeah.
And I would say this. Like, when I look at Kyrie Irving, he's got flaws. But the playoffs are about scoring late. He's a great finisher. So as much as the trade analysts are saying this, do you believe LeBron James wakes up this morning and thinks, I am really excited about a 7-foot prospect, Crowder, who I've abused for 3 years, less of a point guard, and an 18-year-old?
Whoa. First of all, here's what y'all not thinking about Isaiah Thomas. He's never played with anybody like LeBron James. The game just got easier for Isaiah Thomas. If he's healthy, he will be more effective in every quarter, but particularly down the stretch because he's getting to play with LeBron James, who will create space and opportunities for him. Jim, I just can't believe that you're sitting here telling me that you're acting like everything was on the table and there were all these other players they could have gotten. They got the best that they could. Is Jay Crowder a perfect solution? But given the details of Kyrie Irving demanded to get out of there.
Jason, the question was, did they close the gap?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, no, they did not close the gap as far as beating Golden State.
So Derrick Rose, Jay Crowder, real NBA players.
Isaiah Thomas.
Jeff Green. Let me say, you're selling Isaiah Thomas short. He made a great point.
He is
this
short.
Is a guy who, this is a guy
what do you mean?
who scored 29 points a game as the #1 option on a 53-win team. Hold on, Jim. He's now going to play with LeBron James, the best creator in the league.
But he had to score. Can you pull up this graphic, please? Can you pull up this graphic on Isaiah Thomas? Okay? See at the bottom down there? Minus 5.5. In regards to
Warriors
versus the Warriors, okay? And also, too, is differential when he's on the court with Golden State and off the court. On the court, minus 9.2. Off the court, plus 14 when they play Golden State.
So he's a liability.
He's a liability.
You know that.
And this is what you going back to scoring. I'm telling you this right now. The NBA is built on size and length. I don't care what you talk about, positional. At 5'9", he's not going to have that same kind of impact versus Golden State. You can talk all you want about the other guys in the East and all that and what he did. I love him to death. It's not the same thing when you're talking about closing the gap on Golden State.
All right, to the Celtics, who now look like a completely different team. They are, with just 4 players returning from last year's squad after moving key players, Isaiah Thomas and Jay Crowder. Boston GM Danny Ainge admitted he gave up a lot to make this move happen.
It is a high price tag, but, acquiring a 25-year-old perennial all-star, a player that, fits a timeline for us and is a fantastic offensive player, is one of the best offensive players in the league. You have to pay a heavy price.
All right, now, Whitlock, a different question. Let's just talk East now. Are the Celtics with Kyrie the top seed in the East?
No. Listen, no, because LeBron is always, we don't even got to put Cleveland on. LeBron's always the top seed in the East, regardless of what the standings say. Does adding Kyrie, to me, and I'm going to flip the question and answer one that I think is a better question. Boston's more of a threat now to Cleveland. I think adding Kyrie Irving to Gordon Hayward, now they have a legitimate superstar. I believe Kyrie Irving's a legitimate superstar. Hayward now a legitimate #2. You still have a great coach there in Brad Stevens. I think the Eastern Conference has just gotten very interesting. Look, do I think Cleveland will win? Absolutely. But I think it's a 6 or 7 game series now.
Kyrie Irving is the best finisher. I've never seen the best finisher in the league be 6'2". It's always been Kobe, Michael, Shaq, Duncan. So now I get the best finisher. I mean, Boston had a bunch of B guys. Isaiah was good. Best finisher, best young coach. Guy draws up the best plays. Guy ends possessions the best way. I think that's the difference, is that Boston seeking big shots in games is way better end of possession, end of half, end of game. I think that's a real thing in the playoffs. You may not feel the difference with Isaiah, Kyrie, regular season. You get to playoff games, they are absolutely, you just talked about, hey, Isaiah's got LeBron. Kyrie's got Brad Stevens, who draws up the best half-court plays in the league, and now you've got the best finisher. That's where Boston's better to me.
Well, and I agree with you on this perspective, too, that when you look at Boston in the makeup, what hurt them in the playoffs last year was late-game situations when they had to manufacture a shot. It was only Isaiah Thomas. Yep. No one else could really do that. The question goes to the learning curve for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, how quickly they can assimilate to their different roles. Now, moving Jay Crowder, I thought, was critical for Boston because it opens up quality minutes for these 2 young men. So now you don't have to worry about that factor. They can grow into that. Does it close the gap with Boston versus Cleveland? Of course it does, because Kyrie is a game changer. Brad Stevens, his intellect in regards to underneath, out of bounds, how to get possessions and plays off script of your offense means a lot. But you still got to go back to one thing in regards to understanding how to win in a 7-game series, and that's where this Boston team stay healthy. That's where the question is going to come. Can you beat Cleveland in 2? Yeah. Can you beat them in 7 mentally is going to be the question.
But let's not forget, and we've seen this twice with LeBron in his walk year in the postseason. Jim, you remember against the Celtics the first time around? LeBron checked out. You remember against the Spurs? They got blown out in the finals. One of the issues that nobody's talking about, the cloud of what will LeBron do, is going to hover over that Cleveland team the entire season into the playoffs, and that's where Boston's youth, they're very young, Jim. Great point, like Gordon Hayward's 27. They got a lot of guys under 30. by the time the postseason rolls around, I think Brad Stevens has a winner here.
That's an interesting point. There is a psychology to sports. Like, I feel like Boston just bought a new house. And, you know, all the rooms aren't perfect, but it's new paint, new house, new fun, new neighborhood. Psychologically, does Cleveland, Whitlock, feel like this is an old team? This is an old team.
They just got Jay Crowder and Isaiah Thomas. They just got younger. And
Isaiah Thomas has a bad hip. He's a 29-year-old guy.
He's 29. We'll see. I think he recovers, and I think playing alongside LeBron gives him new life. We've seen it with everybody. Again, I'm not comparing Isaiah Thomas to Dwayne Wade, but we saw what LeBron did for Dwayne Wade, who was a little bit banged up. We saw what he did for everybody that he plays with. You know, LeBron's that tide that lifts all boats.
Who are you more excited to watch next year? Celtics or Cavs?
The Cavaliers.
I'm the Celtics.
I'm Celtics too. Oh, I got to see this.
I think the Celtics.
What world are you living in? You're the biggest LeBron James homer, and then somehow
now it's starters. Four new starters.
LeBron James has been the greatest show in the basketball for the last 15 years.
Could you argue this? Boston now has the second and third best players in the East: Kyrie Irving, Gordon Hayward.
No,
I want to see those.
Greek freak. Come on.
How do you go Greek? Come on, John Wall. You put Gordon Hayward in front of him. Now keep in mind this: NBA. When you think about this, the NBA is like a movie. What we just saw was a snapshot of what it could be. We got to let this thing play out a little bit more to really see how the interaction with Kyrie and Brad Stevens works, but also what happens with Cleveland in regards to Isaiah's health. Again, we're 30 days away from camp. He hasn't been on the court yet. Okay? That is critical to see how this whole thing plays out. What?
Jim Jackson isn't a doctor, but he plays one on this show.
He's hammering away at Isaiah. Maybe he has access to the doctor information.
I was with Dr. J all weekend.
All right, welcome back to the show. Jim Jackson's reluctantly black here on the stage. Eric Davis is here with us as well. Back to the NBA, who continues to grab headlines during the NFL season, despite reports of a growing rift between LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. LeBron took the high road yesterday after Irving got shipped out of town, responding to a fan who thanked Kyrie over Twitter, saying, quote, "That's the only way to be to this kid. Special talent, special guy, nothing but respect, and what a ride it was, our 3 years. Together, young gold." All right, Cowherd. Rumors have been flying for months that LeBron is on his way out of Cleveland. Does this trade make him more likely to stay?
No. What's the part of the assets that Cleveland got that most people think's the best thing?
It's a draft pick.
Exactly. When has LeBron showed a great interest in playing with high schoolers? He had Wiggins, not interested.
That was a mistake, but go ahead.
Okay, but
he didn't want to play in high school when he was in high school.
Okay, LeBron is a high IQ basketball player who knows that not only physically but emotionally, you're not ready when you're 18, 19, 20, 21. The best asset they got, that's why I keep saying, Cleveland's not done here. Like, you think this is the finish line. Like, Cleveland thinks, LeBron's staying. You got to make that #1 pick something that LeBron's keenly interested in. Can you get a Paul George? Kevin Love picked Paul George. When has LeBron ever shown interest in playing with high schoolers?
But what you just described is now they have an opportunity to get the piece because they have that first-round pick.
Okay, but that's a big if.
We've just watched this young general manager put on a nice little clinic in my mind. Why doubt him now that he made with that pick, the Brooklyn pick that they just got from Boston, that could be turned into something, a real asset who can help LeBron win now. So, yeah, I think they just move closer to keeping LeBron James.
I just don't believe that. I think LeBron is in a situation where he's looking at...
I've always liked you, Jim.
Well, you're going to like me even more after this one. The trade, to me, didn't indicate or bring LeBron any closer. Now, who knows what he's thinking in regards to staying or leaving? We all want to speculate in regard to what he's going to do. The draft pick is great in regards to future opportunities, whether that's a Michael Porter or a Bagley at that time in that 2018 class. That's the only way this Cleveland organization, post-LeBron, will be able to be competitive.
Yeah, but does it make him attractive?
But here's the thing. It's hard to dictate and understand what LeBron James is going to do. We thought in Miami, once Dwayne Wade kind of took a pay cut opened up the salary cap for a max deal that LeBron was going to stay, and he didn't. He went back to Cleveland. So I'm out of the speculation business in regards to LeBron James, because I give up on it, because I just don't have a clue in regards to what he's thinking and why he's thinking it. But long term, I don't think this trade made me feel any more comfortable that LeBron James is now saying, well, since we made this trade, I'm going to stay.
I don't even think does this trade make you think they're going to beat the Warriors?
No.
Okay, all right. So there's no reason for LeBron to hang around, in my opinion.
And lose to the Warriors.
And lose to the Warriors again. I think LeBron is going to leave and try to get himself in position with other players, the Paul George that you mentioned, but somewhere where that can happen, because they're not going to come to Cleveland.
Eric.
And I think LeBron wants to get out of Cleveland.
Eric. Jim is 6'6", looks like a basketball player, but he's from Ohio. I'm from Indiana. I know basketball. Jim thinks he knows basketball.
What?
Colin thinks he knows basketball.
Are you
The
kidding me?
Cavaliers are closer to Golden State now than they were before.
How?
Inch.
How?
An inch.
How?
What do you mean how? Because they have someone who can defend Kevin Durant and give Jay Crowder
He
and give him a
cannot
break.
defend Kevin Durant.
I'm with him on that one. You may know basketball, but I'm with him on that one.
Let me explain something to you. Kevin Durant is
Don't be
6'10",
fooled by his
6'11".
looks. Yeah.
Jay Crowder's what, 6'7"?
6'8".
Maybe. No, maybe. It's no way. He couldn't do it with Boston. Okay? How is he going to defend Kevin Durant in the
Better
seven-game
than
series?
Iman Shumpert, better than Richard Jefferson.
They weren't in the game like that to guard him.
That's whose minutes he's getting.
Let me explain something, Jason. It sounds good on paper.
Yeah.
He can be physical all he wants. That kid in Golden State, Crowder ain't got nothing for him. I love him to death. He works hard. He's going to hustle. He's going to do all the little things. That move didn't bring them closer to beating Golden State. They needed somebody 6'8", like a Paul George.
It's not over.
That's going to make Kevin
It's
Durant
not
play
over.
defense.
It's not over. They have a draft pick.
You're talking
They can
about
add
now.
another
You just said
asset.
Jay Crowder can guard him. He can't.
They have an asset
Mr.
that they
Indiana
can.
basketball.
If they can listen.
What?
I was raised by Bobby Knight. I know basketball.
You know how to argue, too. And you know how to argue.
That's what he knows. And now on top of what he and what
Let's just assume LeBron gets personnel. He's a smart guy. I mean, well, he is. He knows his basketball. LeBron's looking at this thing going, okay, we're not as good at point guard. We're not.
Nope.
Kyrie's better. LeBron's like,
Kyrie wanted to leave. Throw that in.
okay, but we're not as good as point guard. I couldn't give a rep about a 7-foot prospect. I've been abusing Jay Crowder for 3 years. LeBron's not stupid. LeBron knows that number one pick is everything. And LeBron's thinking, number one pick, Kevin Love, Paul George. The only way it makes LeBron stay is LeBron is thinking about himself, we're not done yet.
Right. And
LeBron
now they
does-
have an asset, so
Okay.
they don't have to be done.
Okay, but let's just be clear here. The asset is the number one pick.
Yeah.
But to get a Paul George, you'd have to sell something else. Kevin Love was available. Nobody wanted him last year. It's not the greatest
Package him
asset.
with this top pick potentially. You may be able.
But here's the problem when you move Kevin Love. Keep in mind, you can say all you want. Part of what Kevin Love gives Cleveland is freedom of movement in space. When they run the pick and roll, because he can space the floor, he opens up opportunities. If you can't replace a Kevin Love with a player like that, why trade him? Because now you take away a valuable weapon and asset that can compete on the court. You got to think about that.
Let me move all the way back, Jim. You would agree it was a good trade. Given the circumstances and situation, it was a good trade for Cleveland. Would you say yes or no?
I would say yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
No,
So I'm not going to say great and it closed
No, it
the
was a
gap
good
to
trade.
beat.
So it was a move forward. They now have an asset.
But that's not
to
going to
potentially.
But the trade wasn't enough to make LeBron want to stay beyond this. And actually, I think the number one pick gives him reason. It makes it easier for him to leave because you're already in rebuilding mode.
By the way, let's say you walked into your apartment tonight, and I don't know if you cook, but you wanted cookies. And you didn't have much. You had a little butter and a little flour and a handful of chocolate chips. And you made the best cookies. You made the best cookies given the circumstance.
Yeah.
Don't make them great cookies.
Exactly.
That's the best.
I'll eat them though.
It's a good trade given the circumstance. Welcome back. Jim Jackson, Eric Davis are here. Let's move to the UFC, where Dana White announced that John Jones tested positive for steroids at UFC 214. The event had appeared to be a triumphant return to the octagon for John Jones, who defeated Daniel Cormier to retake the light heavyweight title. But he's now been stripped of the title, and Dana White says he might lose even more than that.
I mean, if this ends up and he gets, you know, and it ends up, you know, getting 2 or 3, it might be the end of his career. So to talk about his legacy, I mean, that's probably the end of his career.
You don't see him coming back?
He might. Well, let me tell you what, it's tough. I mean, how old is John now? 30?
30.
Yeah, 33, 34, trying to make a comeback again. And you look at what could have been and what he could have done, and it's sad. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I always know what to say. I don't know what to say about this one.
All right, Whitlock, should UFC just cut ties with John Jones?
Listen, if I'm listening to Dana White there, John Jones just cut ties with the UFC. I mean, listen, this is his second steroid bust. He had the hit and run incident. That's 3 strikes and you're out, as far as I can tell. In this game of baseball, he's out.
Did Hollywood give up on Robert Downey after his issues? Did boxing always give up on Mike Tyson? This is the entertainment business. This is a whole different ballgame. These aren't elected officials. He's the best, most gifted fighter the sport's ever had.
You can watch him now and not think he's on drugs. You would have to think he's on steroids. He's cheating.
You know what, man? I watched baseball for a long time, and I never thought a lot of those guys were clean. Home run's a home run.
It's a fight, though. It's not fair to Daniel Cormier. It's not fair to the other fighters.
Okay.
Which is why you have to change the testing policy.
Yes.
So you shouldn't be finished with John Jones. What they should be finished with is their testing policy. Because UFC and Dana White, they got all their money off of it. They wanted to pump this fight, the best pound for pound fighter in the history of the UFC. He's back. Let's make this money. Let's do it. Then you're going to test him afterwards when he's already failed the test? Come on, what league does that?
You always say you don't like giving up on young men.
I don't trust him. I don't think you can sell tickets to him anymore.
You test him before his fight.
I think they tested him before his fight.
No.
The results came in.
That's all you have to do.
Right. The test was after the weigh-in. The results come in after the fight. So technically, they tested him before.
No, I'm talking about getting the results.
Get your results before the fight, and you know the guy is clean.
But isn't this a challenge of the UFC that is built around individuals?
Yes.
The individuals make the sport. Kind of like boxing. And I look at boxing. I'm a huge boxing fan. The stigma, the cloud around it, boxing was fixed. It was mafia type. But because you had so many kind of intriguing individuals, it kept people watching. No matter what happened, even with the Pacquiao fight of it maybe being stolen from him, it's still something there. With UFC, it's hard to cut your ties with a guy like that because look what's happened on the women's side with Ronda Rousey. She generated so much attention in regards to people tuning in that weren't avid UFC fighters just to watch her. She drove the bus. So it's a catch-22 for Dana White in regards to, okay, who's next? Who's really going to carry the torch within UFC to keep people eyes on the screen? It's an individual sport.
What if Tiger comes back and can golf? Should the PGA just cut ties with him?
Well, he hasn't been busted for steroids yet. He's been busted for nude pictures, nude women.
It's a gentleman's game. It's a gentleman's game. He's bad for the brand. Or does he sell out tournaments?
Well, yeah, first of all, John Jones, Tiger Woods, there's a huge gap here.
Well, but I would argue they're both.
I was about to say, golf, Tiger Woods, UFC, John Jones.
He is easily.
Conor McGregor is the guy.
Okay, Conor McGregor by Monday, well, no, actually, by Saturday night at 10 could be a boxer. I mean, by the way, Rousey, Tate, Brock Lesnar's not fighting. I mean, by the way.
It's a microwave sport, and they got microwave athletes. I mean, again, I was laughing when they were calling Ronda Rousey the greatest female athlete of all time. I was like, what? Huh? Who? How? I mean, who she beat up? But we don't even know anything about this sport.
Couldn't we argue, though, that, baseball's 1,000,000 years old, golf. This is a fledgling sport.
Yeah.
It's in its infancy.
That's why it's easy to cut ties with this steroid
That's why it's easy to just change your testing policy. It's a simple thing.
I'm sure they're concerned. What they would argue is if we tested earlier, then they would cheat in the days leading up to the fight. That's why they test so late.
Or if you test, because I think it's a good point.
Both.
Or what happens if you find out right before the fight, an hour before? Then you don't have a fight card. If you have paid for pay-per-view, there's no fights. Welcome back. Joined now by a couple of Super Bowl champs, Seth Joyner, Eric Davis. Let's move to the National Football League, where NFLPA President Eric Winston was asked about a possible work stoppage yesterday after Executive Director of the union, DeMaurice Smith, raised the possibility last week Needless to say, Winston didn't seem concerned.
Honestly, I don't care, and I don't think the guys in this locker room care whether this thing's going to be around in 20 years because none of us are going to be playing. So if these guys want to own for a long time, then they can own for a long time, but another work stoppage might kill the golden goose. So I'm certainly not worried about it. I'm not going to be around that long, and I don't care even if they're rookies in here. They're not going to be playing that long. So if this thing dies out in 20 years, it dies out in 20 years. But that's not really my concern, and I don't think it's any of these players' concern in here either.
Whitlock, should the players be upset with what their president's saying?
Nothing has upset me more. Listen, I love football, and I make no bones about it. I think football's been a great sport, particularly for African Americans. Football helped me get to college. It's helped these guys make a lot of money, help their family. I don't get this. This is a disgrace to me. This is everything that I hate about this young generation. They don't care about anything that doesn't have to do with them. And so the guy he doesn't care if the NFL's here 20 years from now. What about the older guys that made a lot of sacrifices so that he could have the opportunity to earn all this money, to play in the league for this long, and get to the point where he's like, I don't care. I don't care about the league. This is the mentality of young people. They don't care about anything that doesn't have to do with them. This was appalling to me. If I was an NFL Players Association member or an old player or whatever, I'd want this guy fired.
Yeah, I thought Winston was outrageously glib. So you're telling me that former NFL player doesn't have any gravitas? It used to be in America, when you were an astronaut or a former astronaut, that was guaranteed income. And then NASA doesn't send many astronauts up, and nobody cares about astronauts. The fact you can walk in a room, and I'm a former NFL player. Oh, you want to be on a TV show? You want to go to a trade show? You want to get paid for dinner? Like, what he's saying is, if the league dies, then Eric Winston's just a dude. I played in the NFL. Well, what's that? Like, the idea that being an NFL player doesn't make Eric and Seth different than the rest of us. If I walked into a party and say, hey, this guy played in the NFL for the Eagles. He hit people late, by the way, all the time.
Don't buy
that. That doesn't hold any esteem in society?
Listen, this has got to be the most selfish statement that I've ever seen out of an NFLPA director, okay? He's forgotten. These young guys need to be reminded. In 1987, we went on strike. Scab games they had, okay? What we did was went on strike so that these guys could make the astronomical amounts of money that they make today, okay? We had a fiduciary responsibility to the game, to ourselves, to the future of the game, to the future players in the game. And he has a fiduciary responsibility to himself, the current players, and the future players, and the game itself. So I am just like appalled and really blown away by this statement because he has lost sight of the guys that came before him that created the entity that allows him to enjoy the lifestyle that he now enjoys.
What he just said is stupid. That's what I'm going at Winston. That's just stupid. Because you don't care about the game being around in 20 years. Well, what about the people that played before you, that are playing with you, that need that pension that is coming from that? What about the CTE issues and the families that will be affected? Well, this game dies. Am I responsible for what happens to you? The income that could be coming in to help those families, some of the players that will be suffering from injuries like that. The insurance, all the separate issues that go along with after you've played this game. Insuring your family, your body being so broken up that you can't get insurance if you don't have this to lean back on because you sacrifice yourself out there on the field. There are so many different issues that go along with you just saying, I don't care, and being selfish. And you're right, that's a very selfish comment, and you got to get beyond that. It was something we dealt with as players, and the players have to do this now. You got to look at it, and you got to understand that the game is not all about you.
It's bigger than you.
It's bigger than you. If Jack Nicklaus said, I don't care if golf just evaporates. You'd be like, you don't care about the history of the game? Like if Jack Nicklaus said that, you'd be like, one of the great things about musicians is when like the Eric Claptons like embrace the new bands. It's like, you see the old B.B. Kings of the olds, they love the new acts because they love the art of music. Actors, age, love the new stars. Like, If you want to treat your life like a rental car or a hotel room, go for it. But it says something about your character when you don't care about anything beyond your personal borders.
I was sitting here yesterday when this came out, and today, like, this, and I understand that we've had events, the LeBron trade, but it's like no one's talking about this. This guy is the head of the union. He represents the players. DeMaurice Smith should be embarrassed. There should have been some comment from DeMaurice Smith disavowing these comments, backing away, because this to me is an indication why I have a problem with the union. Because if he can say this and DeMaurice Smith has no problem with it, this is why the union's ineffective and not a good representative of the older guys or the current players. This is crazy.
Just reverse it. Wouldn't we be outraged if, and we have been, when we don't think the league cares about its older players?
Absolutely.
And players have a right to be outraged. If the NFL came out and said, we don't care, what you're saying is you don't care about the players who put their life in harm's way? I mean, most of these guys that play, bad knee, bad hip. Can you imagine if a league said this about players? We would be.
The problem with the NFLPA, though, when you really get down to the nuts and bolts of it, their biggest concern is about the current players. The current players are the ones, in a lot of ways, that need them the least. Because these guys are in the prime of their career, the prime earning years, okay? The former athletes, the former players are nothing more than an afterthought. So if the players are making money and they're happy, the current players, that is, why should the NFL really, why should the PA really care?
You should,
this is the problem I've always had. I had many arguments with Gene Upshaw, God rest his soul. But we had many, many battles because of how I perceive things to be, how I believe things to be, and how the union went about.
Gene Upshaw is better than this current leadership.
Oh, I agree. But we still had our bouts.